Welcome to the Healers Café, conversations on health and healing with Manon Bolliger, a retired and deregistered naturopathic physician with 30 plus years of experience. Here you will discover engaging and informative conversations between experienced healers, covering all aspects of healing, the personal journey, the journey of the practitioner, and the amazing possibilities for our own body and spirit.
So welcome to the Healers Café. And today I have with me Elizabeth Yarnell. And well, the exciting thing I want to share about what is happening today or yesterday, she just actually is going to launch her book and a course, which we'll tell you more about it shortly. But let me a little bit tell you the background. So she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1999. And her mission has been to redefine multiple sclerosis and autoimmunity naturally as a traditional naturopath and a certified LEAP therapist. And she's worked with hundreds of MS and other autoimmune sufferers in her nationwide clinic using unique, personalized, non-pharmaceutical therapies to empower them to reclaim their health. She's been a TEDx speaker. She sold a cookbook to over 70,000 people. She's a patented inventor and featured everywhere like CBC, NBC, ABC, all of those places, and Martha Stewart Living Radio. Anyway, I think that's probably enough to give a sense of your background. Yeah, and I guess my first question is, what actually started you down this journey? Was it the diagnosis with MS?
Thank you so much for having me on today, Dr. Manon. This is so much fun to come back and chat with you again. And it's always, for me, really amazing when I listen to that introduction, because when I started, I never thought I would be at a place like this. I was really just looking for solutions for my own health, because one night in 1999, I went to sleep as usual and I awoke the next morning blind in my right eye. And it was really disorienting and scary. I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I didn't know what I was going to do for the rest of my life. At that point, I was a freelance journalist and an instructional designer. And I had been working on an article for the Denver Post actually the night before and printed it out off my printer to look it over the next morning. But when I looked it over the next morning, it was like someone had taken an eraser to huge chunks of the text. And it was super frightening and unnerving. And within a short order, I was in the eye doctor's office, diagnosed with optic neuritis, inflammation of the optic nerve, and then shuffled off into an MRI where I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Really just a life-changing moment. Really, overnight, my life changed and my whole vision of my future went away. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But after I learned that 80% of MS patients are significantly disabled within 10 years of diagnosis, I knew that I had to take action to save myself. And that's when I started investigating the link between what we eat and how we feel, and how that makes and allows our body to function.
Yeah, well, there's nothing like a wake-up call with a condition, and especially when in traditional, so-called, not traditional, I should call it conventional medicine, there's very little solutions. It's very much like, oh, well, you've got this autoimmune incurable disease, and and I actually my MS started with optic neuritis as well. So, and
Very
it was
common, right?
very common. Yeah. And I remember it being such a shocker. And then, you know, you start researching, you start looking, you start finding out things. And I'm assuming that you're dancing and you're feeling fine now.
Well, exactly. What I realized was that what my doctors were offering me were assortment of very, very toxic, I would call them experimental drugs with very low efficacy rates, like 22% efficacy, which
Yeah.
does not seem to be worth it for the side effects that are so common when you get
Yeah.
on these toxic drugs. But my father is a neurologist,
Uh-huh.
and he was very worried, and he felt I needed to start a disease modifying therapy right away. So I began injecting myself every day with a pharmaceutical drug. And as a result, I had hives all over my body for
Mm.
3 solid years, every single day. A good day was 30 hives, a bad day was 300 hives. It was miserable. And by the end of that, my body began to experience a seizure every time I would inject the drug. And finally I said, you know, this is whatever is going on with my body, it's telling me it doesn't want this drug. And by that point, I was already pretty deep into my diet and nutrition and lifestyle changes, and was already in that way cleaning out my body, my environment, and along that path. And so I haven't taken a pharmaceutical drug since, I think that was 2002.
Wow. And so what were the main things that you found, like compared to the McDougall diet or removing lectins, or what has in your experience been the thing that has helped the most, or the things, you know, it could be more than one.
Oh, it's several things for sure. And this is what I teach in my programs, is that at the beginning, I think at the root of most, if not all, chronic inflammatory conditions is hidden parasitic infection. And I think that we, as a society, tend to think that parasites are only something that you might experience in underdeveloped parts of the world, maybe tropical areas. But that is absolutely not true. In fact, the Centers for Disease Control in the US estimate that 7 out of 10 adults are carrying around a load of parasites in their body. And our immune system does not like foreign invaders. And if you have parasites, antibiotics won't wipe them out, and they won't go away unless you directly address them. So you end up in this chronic inflammatory cycle where your immune system says, there's foreign invaders, we need to get rid of them, start the immune cascade. And then that happens, but they don't go away because it doesn't affect parasites. So I think hidden parasitic infection is enormously important. And then following that, because of the chronic inflammation, it causes damage to your digestive tract. So that's when we have to recognize that food sensitivities are happening. And so with my clients, we design a customized anti-inflammatory diet based on their unique sensitivities. And then we look at what damage has been done to their digestive tract through a 24-hour urinalysis, and try to supplement them as best we can so that they can achieve complete digestion and begin absorbing and assimilating their nutrients again. So those, I think, are some of the key factors involved with creating an environment that fosters autoimmunity. And then on top of that, and part of that is the toxicity. And this was what my 2014 TED Talk was all about, is all the toxins in our modern world. I mean, if you live in a city, every time you walk out the door, you're breathing in particulates and petroleum byproducts. These are not things that the human body evolved to process. So we can very easily become overly toxic and overload our toxic threshold and tip over into constant inflammatory reactions. So in fact, the title for my next book is about this. So it's I believe that the whole concept of autoimmunity is an oxymoron. If you take the word apart, auto means self, immunity means allergic. So allergic to self, that is what conventional medicine says is happening. Oh, you know what? Your body has become allergic to itself, and that's why you're having all these allergic reactions, these inflammatory reactions in your body. But you know what? Evolution says, nay, that's impossible. The whole species would wipe itself out in a short order. So I believe, and this is the title of my upcoming book, autoimmunity is an oxymoron looking for triggers in all the wrong places.
Yeah, and I mean, it's an interesting way of looking at it for sure, because I mean, I can see part of the explanation making sense, but on the other hand, it is a bit of an oxymoron, right? Because that's not how we naturally function, right?
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, no, I was just thinking about, synthesis and anyway, yeah, we won't talk about that, but I was just thinking, there are some reactions in the body that seem like the body's fighting against itself. But if the gut is not healthy, and for example, you have, parasites, therefore, because if a gut is healthy, parasites are not going to show up in the same way, or your body will eliminate them far more easily because we're made so perfectly. But if we're, off kilter, and like you said, all these, heavy metals and everything, and we're constantly bombarded by it now. I mean, our skies are covered, and it's like,
yes, our
so
water supply is contaminated. Our food is contaminated. It's everywhere. In fact, the Environmental Working Group did a study where they tested the cord blood in brand new newborn babies, and they found more than 200 chemicals in the cord blood, just the moment of birth coming out into this world already contaminated.
Yeah, no, it's a real, I mean, it's like, it's a long experiment on humans, if you think about it, like, leave us alone and let our bodies work as they were meant to. We're
right.
Dealing with more factors, and that affects our ability to cleanse, to clear, to and then you end up needing sometimes more vitamins or more minerals or more, it's like we're in a vicious circle of even taking more natural things, but to compensate for all the mess that's in our bodies.
Right. And detoxifying, I think, is a big essential thing for us to do in many ways. In my clinic, I've been seeing a lot of connections between heavy metal absorption and autoimmunity, but also things like senility and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. A lot of these aging related diseases might not have to be so devastating if we could only just simply work on detoxing a lifetime of heavy metals out of the body.
So, and what have you found helpful for detoxing? Because there's many methods, and some are much more intense than others.
There are, and in fact, there's some that actually I'm scared to use myself or even to recommend, because they can have some, I'm going to say, violent results and can be a little frightening. And especially if, like me, I'm working with people who may already be in a fragile state of health, and I don't want to add in something that might trigger more reactions in their body. So my favorite way to detox doesn't necessitate any kind of dietary changes. It doesn't necessitate any supplements that might be expensive or questionable. I'm a big fan of the ionic foot bath.
Manon Bolliger here, and I want to thank you for taking actionable steps towards engaging your healing journey and helping others discover their path by watching, sharing, subscribing, and reviewing these podcasts. Every review and share helps spread the word, these different perspectives and choices and options for healing. And to thank you, I'd like to invite you to sign up to my free 7-sequence email tips on health and healing for everyday life. You can go to healerscafe.com tips. Thanks so much.
And in fact, I just launched a course called autoimmunedetoxtherapy.com. And you can go and you can learn everything you need to know about getting your own ionic foot bath. They're remarkably affordable. And in fact, if you want me to, I'll even send you a whole kit for just a couple $100, or you can get your own off of Amazon or wherever, and just follow the course. And I'll tell you everything you need to know about doing a therapeutic month, basically, of ionic foot baths and how it can help clear those heavy metals, parasites, even, and other toxins out of your body. Yeast as well will come out through the ionic foot bath.
Yeah, that's definitely something I have I have zero experience with in my clinic. I don't think we're even allowed to do that because there's always different rules, different.
It's true. It's true. And I think it's been something that has been poo-pooed by conventional doctors for many years, but really I think electroceuticals are probably the medicines of the future. And electroceutical means a remedy that uses electricity to heal. And this is what an ionic foot bath does. It uses electricity to change the charge in your body and open up the walls of the cells so that they can release those toxins and they can actually come out into the water.
Mm-hmm. And so have you been able, I mean, again, this is the question I get asked or got asked all the time. Do you have like test before and test after to show that this works? Or is it because people believe in it? And I just thought, given the audience that's listening, I've got to ask you that question.
That is very interesting. No, because I don't know of an effective test. Maybe you can enlighten me if you know of one that will show how toxic how a person might be. So I don't test before. If that is something that somebody needed, usually people feel a little toxic, or they're having trouble getting their health on track, or they're having symptoms and they maybe they know they have been exposed. Maybe they live next to a factory growing up, or they lived on a farm and exposed to all those pesticides and things like that. So sometimes people already self-identify, but often I think it's a very good first step into the world of natural health and healing yourself, because it's not expensive. It's much more affordable than, for instance, going through my entire program, because the other testing I do is quite expensive. So it can be an affordable first step, and there really are no detrimental side effects.
Mm. But I was thinking the test that is the least acceptable, but I think the most accurate, is actually the symptomatology of the patient.
Yes.
How does the patient actually feel?
Yes.
What's energy? What's their sleep? What else is going on? And there's things like hair analysis, which, because it's the extracellular hair is the extracellular aspect, it does hold some of the metals, right? So that's another way of checking. I know when I had high mercury levels at one point, that I could see that. So that might be a test, which is not overly expensive to use.
That's a very good idea. I usually only think about doing hair analysis for minerals, but I think that's a really good idea. That might be something I can bring into my clinic, and start using that.
If you're seeing so many people, with one condition, it's really, it's a perfect setup for actually doing tests that show that natural things do work, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm mixed on how many tests do you need, because there's some clinics you walk into and it's like, after paying like $2,000 worth of tests,
It's true.
then they're gonna treat you, and it's like, oh, just treat, it's fine. I'll
Right,
tell you
right.
if I feel better.
So yes,
fine line.
so I do have an assessment that they fill out before and after that that can be used as a guidepost in that way. I guess I was thinking you were really after looking for like a laboratory test.
Well, it can be both. That's why I'm asking, just to see what people, what about diet wise too? Like, have you found that certain foods like lectins, for example, are an issue for most people, or not particularly, or yes, because of parasites?
I would say not at all. Well, in my clinic, we clear parasites for everybody first. That happens first, because even if you don't have parasites, no harm done. But you probably have them, and we need to level the playing field before we even start doing any dietary changes or anything else. So, so they clear the parasites first, and then we use this very, very accurate food sensitivity test called the mediator release test. So this test is not the same as like Everlywell or the other tests that you might be seeing on the market. Those are IgE antibody tests, which are very, I think, unreliable and unhelpful when you're looking to assess food sensitivities. So the mediator release test, as opposed to those other tests, does not look for antibodies. It looks for mediator release. So the most famous mediator we all know is histamine. We know that if we have a poison ivy encounter or a bee sting, and we take some Benadryl, which is an antihistamine, that we can get some relief from the pain that inflammation is causing from that encounter. Histamine is only one of 80 or more mediators that the bloodstream can release upon exposure to what it deems to be a threat. So this test is unique, and there's only one lab in the entire country that runs it. And it tests 170 foods and chemicals to see which ones trigger our blood to our white blood cells to release the inflammatory cascade, the mediators that incite that. So that's the subtitle of my book, right? Looking for triggers in all the wrong places, because traditional Western medicine doesn't do this, is not looking for these triggers. But meanwhile, I can tell you, I wish I could say everyone with MS should avoid lectins. But that is a complete lie and mythology, because every single person I test has a unique print in their gut. And for myself, for example, one of my most inflammatory foods is lettuce.
Wow.
Lettuce. What would you think would be the healthiest thing to reach for, right? What do you reach for when you're trying to improve your health? That's salad. But for me, when I eat lettuce, that's when I get pretty severe MS symptoms, where I become wobbly on my feet and I start falling over and tripping. So I would have never guessed that. There's no lectins in lettuce.
No, and certainly an antibody test would be rather useless there, yeah.
Nor would I recommend that everybody avoid lettuce, right?
No,
because
exactly.
Not the same for everybody.
I'm with you on the food issue. As like in the naturopathic college is very, they really push that, this thing or this fad could be something to consider, but in the end, we're individuals. We have to look at how we react. But then the tests, I agree, they're not good tests. They don't really tell you anything.
Right.
I mean, antibody response is a later response, right? It's not your triggered response, right? And we see this being played out currently as well. It's like, so it's
and beyond that, antibodies, if they're not IgA, can be triggered, but not cause any symptoms. You can be asymptomatic.
Correct.
So if your body, that's what's supposed to happen when an antibody is triggered, right? It's supposed to be protective of you. So the antibody is there, it latches onto the allergen, the white blood cells come around and kill it, and they sweep it out through the lymphatic system. That's how it's supposed to work.
Exactly.
Right. So looking for antibodies is looking in the wrong place.
Yeah,
I believe.
Yeah. So let's see what else to ask you about this. I think you've covered the main things that anyone with MS really needs to look at. And you've got resources, your cookbook, I'm assuming.
I do. My cookbook works really, really well for MS and other autoimmune sufferers, or anyone who's just looking for an easy way to get a healthy dinner on the table. I don't know if I can pull it up here. Oh, a little bit. Let's see.
If you go to the,
there we go.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So it's called Glorious One Pot Meals.
Okay.
And in fact, if your listeners want to go to gloriousonePotmeals.com, no hyphen there, they can sign up to get my ultimate checklist for stocking your pantry and your freezer for quick, easy, and healthy dinners. And while we're talking about MS and diet, if they go to multiplesclerosisdiet.com, you can get my top 3 items that someone with MS or other autoimmune issues should never eat.
Oh, I'm curious what that is, but
well, I won't spoil the surprise.
No. Okay. Well, anyway, it was lovely speaking with you, and congrats on getting this information out to more people, because definitely autoimmunity as a general thing is definitely on the rise. So it's wonderful to have simple solutions that, get to the root of things and change people's lives. So.
Well, yes. And, in fact, I'm super excited. I'm about to launch a new program, depending on when this comes out. So you might have to jump on it, because we're starting December 5th, 2022. It's called the Autoimmune Reset Experience. And if you go to autoimmuneresetexperience.com, you can find out a lot more about it. But it includes, it's a joint program I'm hosting with Dr. Irene Kopp of the Shift Institute. And it includes resetting your immune system through tapping and you're working with your adrenals, along with my functional medicine slanted program, where we work with lab results and design customized plans for you to follow in your day-to-day life. So that's a great place to learn more about how this can go. And wow, I've given you guys a lot of URLs this time. But the last one I want to share is, if you have any other questions, please reach out to me at my website at ElizabethYarnell.com.
Great. And we'll have all those links underneath as well. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with us.
Well, thank you, Dr. Manon. This has been super fun again, and I can't wait till the next time we get together.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to correct. I'm so used to it. It's 30 years, but I'm no longer a doctor because I got my license taken away. So.
But they didn't take away your mind and your wisdom and your knowledge, and you'll always be a doctor to me.
Yeah, thank you. And also my desire to help people. I'll just do it differently.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café with Manon Bolliger. Continue your healing journey by visiting thehealerscafe.com and her website, and discover how to listen to your body and reboot for optimal health.